The vast emptiness of deep space stretched before Eli Rodriguez like an infinite canvas of darkness, punctuated by distant pinpricks of starlight. The hull of the exploration vessel Horizon hummed with a steady rhythm, a mechanical heartbeat that had become as familiar to Eli as his own pulse. As the lead systems engineer, he had spent the last 3 years mapping uncharted sectors of the galaxy, his keen mind always searching for the unexpected. Nothing could have prepared him for the moment the Vordak ship emerged from the quantum fold. It materialized without warning, its crystalline structure refracting starlight in impossible geometric patterns. The ship was unlike anything Eli had ever seen, a living mathematical equation made manifest, all sharp angles and iridescent surfaces that seemed to shift and breathe with an alien intelligence. Incoming transmission, Lieutenant Kira Martinez's voice cut through the bridge's tense silence. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, triangulating the communication frequency. "They're using a quantum encryption we've never encountered before." Eli leaned forward, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the control panel. Years of exploration had taught him that first contact was a delicate dance of curiosity and caution. "Can we translate?" The ship's linguistic AI struggled for several moments before a series of precise, almost mechanical sounds began to form coherent words. Biological unit identified. Categorization required. Threat assessment in progress. The Vordak's communication was clinical, devoid of emotion. Eli could almost hear the cold calculations behind each word, a species that viewed existence through the lens of pure logic and probability. "This is Eli Rodriguez of the human exploration vessel Horizon," he responded, keeping his tone neutral. "We come in peace and seek mutual understanding." A pause. Then, "Humans classified as high-risk variable. Emotional responses create unpredictable outcomes. Probability of conflict, 87.6%. Kira shot Eli a look of disbelief. "They're profiling us before we've even had a proper conversation." The Vordak ship began to pulse with an intricate light pattern, a language of its own, communicating complex mathematical probabilities faster than any verbal exchange could manage. Eli recognized it as a form of threat assessment, the aliens meticulously calculating every potential scenario of their interaction. What the Vordak didn't understand was that humans thrived in uncertainty. "Lieutenant," Eli said quietly, "prepare a detailed log of our exploration mission. Include our medical records, technological achievements, and our cultural documentation on conflict resolution." Kira raised an eyebrow. "You want to give them our entire history?" "Not just give," Eli smiled, a glint of determination in his eyes. "Challenge them to understand us." The transmission continued, the Vordak's language a complex algorithm of judgment and preemptive defense. They spoke of humans as a variable to be contained, a potential threat to be neutralized or controlled. Their entire communication was built on the fundamental assumption that emotional beings were inherently unstable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. As the Horizon maintained its position, Eli began to compile a comprehensive presentation. It would not be a simple data dump, but a carefully crafted narrative that would challenge every preconceived notion the Vordak held about humanity. Stories of exploration, of sacrifices made for strangers, of innovations born from curiosity rather than conflict. The universe was about to witness a collision of perspectives, where cold calculation would meet human spirit. And Eli Rodriguez was ready to prove that humanity was far more than a statistical risk to be managed. The quantum communication channel between the Horizon and the Vordak ship pulsed with an intensity that went beyond mere data transmission. It was a battlefield of intellects, where every nuanced response carried the weight of potential interspecies conflict. Director Zara Oleander, the Horizon's chief diplomatic officer, watched Eli Rodriguez with a mixture of curiosity and concern. His approach to the Vordak was unlike any first contact protocol she had ever witnessed. Where most would retreat or posture defensively, Eli seemed to be engaging the aliens in a complex psychological chess match. "They're analyzing our response patterns," Eli muttered, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "See how they reconstruct each communication based on our previous interactions." The Vordak's latest transmission arrived, a crystalline burst of mathematical precision, emotional variability detected. Threat assessment upgraded. Potential for irrational conflict, 92.3%. Kira Martinez, still at her post, let out a sardonic laugh. "They really don't understand us at all." Eli's response was carefully crafted. Instead of a defensive argument, he began to share a series of human narratives, stories of rescue missions, scientific breakthroughs achieved through collaborative effort, moments of profound sacrifice where individuals risked everything for strangers. The Vordak's communication pattern shifted. Their mathematical language began to slow, processing inputs that defied their predictive models. "These narratives introduce non-quantifiable variables," came their response. "Emotional content compromises logical assessment. Explain the survival benefit of actions not driven by immediate self-preservation." Director Oleander raised an eyebrow. "They're actually asking to understand, not just categorize." Eli selected a specific story, the tale of the International Space Station rescue mission of 2047, where astronauts from 3 different nations risked their lives to save a crew from a catastrophic system failure. He broke down the mission's logistics, the split-second decisions, the teamwork that defied traditional survival calculations. The Vordak's response took longer this time. Their ship's crystalline structure began to pulse with a more complex light pattern, suggesting internal deliberation. Computational models cannot reconcile observed behavior with anticipated responses, they finally transmitted. "Your species introduces chaos as a variable of survival." "Not chaos," Eli corrected, "adaptability." The tension on the Horizon's bridge was palpable. This was more than a first contact scenario, it was a fundamental challenge to the Vordak's entire understanding of intelligent life. Suddenly, the ship's proximity alert blared. A massive energy signature was building near the Vordak vessel, not a weapon, but something else entirely. Before anyone could react, a quantum anomaly began to form, its gravitational waves threatening to destabilize both ships. "This is impossible," Kira muttered. "No natural phenomenon could generate this kind of energy signature." The Vordak's communication became urgent. Catastrophic quantum entanglement detected. Probability of mutual destruction, 99.7%. Eli's mind raced. The anomaly wasn't just a threat, it was a test. A challenge that would prove whether the two species could work together or would be destroyed by their inability to communicate. "We need a collaborative solution," he said, his voice calm despite the cascading danger. "Not a competitive one." As the quantum anomaly began to expand, threatening to consume both ships, Eli Rodriguez prepared to demonstrate something the Vordak had never considered possible, that true problem-solving transcends individual survival, that cooperation could emerge from the most impossible circumstances. The universe held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when pure logic encountered human ingenuity. The quantum anomaly continued to expand, a swirling vortex of impossible mathematics that threatened to consume both the Horizon and the Vordak vessel. Inside the human ship's bridge, time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. Eli Rodriguez stood at the center of a rapidly forming plan, his mind working faster than the ship's advanced computational systems. The Vordak's communication had become a desperate stream of probability calculations, each transmission more frantic than the last. "We cannot comprehend potential resolution," the Vordak transmitted. "Quantum entanglement exceeds known physical parameters. Mutual destruction imminent." Director Zara Oleander watched Eli with a mixture of hope and apprehension. She had seen him solve impossible problems before, but this was beyond anything in their training protocols. "The anomaly isn't just a threat," Eli muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. It's a system trying to communicate. Kira Martinez's fingers flew across the holographic interfaces, running complex simulation after simulation. We're missing something fundamental, she said. The energy patterns, they're not random. They're almost linguistic. Eli's eyes lit up. The Vordak viewed communication as a series of mathematical exchanges, but what if this anomaly was a language of its own? A form of communication so advanced it appeared as a destructive force to less sophisticated observers? We need to respond, he said suddenly. Not with words, not with mathematics, but with something else entirely. The ship's quantum resonance chamber, originally designed for deep space communication experiments, hummed to life. Eli began to input a sequence that defied traditional communication protocols. Instead of a linear message, he created a multidimensional communication matrix that incorporated human emotional ranges, scientific data, and pure creative potential. The Vordak ship went completely silent. For several agonizing moments, nothing happened. The quantum anomaly continued to grow, its edges now threatening to tear apart the fabric of local spacetime. Then, unexpectedly, the anomaly began to change. Its chaotic swirling started to form patterns. Not mathematical patterns, not linear constructions, but something more, a living, breathing representation of complexity that seemed to pulse with a kind of sentience. It's responding, Kira whispered. The Vordak's communication resumed, but now it was different. Less clinical, more curious. Unidentified communication protocol detected. Emotional content integrated with scientific data. Impossible. Eli smiled. Not impossible. Just unexpected. The quantum anomaly began to contract, its destructive potential transforming into something else entirely. It was as if the very fabric of space was learning, adapting, understanding. Director Oleander approached Eli. What did you just do? Showed them that communication is more than just an exchange of information, Eli replied. It's about connection. About understanding. The Vordak ship's crystalline structure began to shift, its previous rigid geometries becoming more fluid, more alive. They were witnessing a fundamental transformation in how an entire species perceived existence. Your method of interaction introduces variables we cannot predict, the Vordak transmitted. This is both terrifying and fascinating. As the quantum anomaly completely dissipated, leaving behind a strange, shimmering residue of potential, Eli Rodriguez had accomplished something unprecedented. He hadn't just avoided destruction, he had initiated a profound dialogue that would challenge the very foundations of interstellar understanding. The galaxy would never be the same. The Horizon and the Vordak ship hung in space, two vessels forever changed by a moment of unexpected communication. Humanity had just proven that its greatest strength wasn't in its technology, its weapons, or its logic, but in its ability to see beyond the obvious, to connect where others would simply calculate. The aftermath of the quantum anomaly transformed the relationship between humans and the Vordak in ways no one could have predicted. What began as a potential conflict had evolved into something far more complex, a delicate dance of mutual curiosity and cautious understanding. Aboard the Horizon, a makeshift diplomatic chamber had been established. The room itself was a testament to human adaptability, designed to accommodate both human and Vordak physiological needs. Soft, adjustable lighting shifted between spectrums that were comfortable for both species, while the environmental controls created a neutral zone that neither found uncomfortable. Eli Rodriguez sat across from NX-Terra, the lead Vordak cultural interpreter. The alien's body was a marvel of crystalline biology, its form seeming to shimmer and shift subtly with each thought process. Where human bodies were soft and organic, NX-Terra's form was a living geometric puzzle, angular yet fluid. Your previous communication method, NX-Terra began, challenged our fundamental understanding of information exchange. Eli leaned forward, his hands clasped together. Communication isn't just about transmitting information. It's about connection, about understanding the context behind the data. The Vordak's crystalline form pulsed with a series of complex light patterns, their equivalent of a contemplative expression. Context is variable. Unpredictable. Our entire societal structure is built on the elimination of variables. That's the difference, Eli explained. Humans don't seek to eliminate variables. We embrace them. We see uncertainty as an opportunity, not a threat. Director Zara Oleander watched the exchange, monitoring a series of linguistic and psychological readouts. The conversation was more than a diplomatic meeting, it was a profound examination of two fundamentally different approaches to existence. NXTerra projected a holographic representation of Vordak's social structure, a perfectly balanced geometric network where every interaction was precisely calculated. Our society minimizes risk. Every decision is a mathematical equation. Emotional responses are considered a critical failure in logic. Eli challenged this directly. But emotion isn't a failure of logic. It's a different kind of intelligence. The ability to make decisions when information is incomplete, to act with compassion, to understand beyond pure calculation. To demonstrate, Eli shared the story of the 2052 Mars Colony Rescue, a mission where human explorers had risked everything to save a group of researchers trapped during a massive solar storm. The mission defied all statistical survival probability, driven by nothing more than a commitment to not leave anyone behind. The Vordak's response was immediate and complex. Their entire crystalline structure began to vibrate, processing information that challenged their most fundamental beliefs. Survival probability was extremely low, NXTerra calculated. Rational decision would be individual preservation. Yet you chose collective survival. We don't see it as a choice, Eli responded. We see it as a responsibility. The psychological barrier between species was crumbling, not through force or negotiation, but through stories. Each narrative Eli shared was a window into human complexity, showing how emotions, far from being a weakness, were actually a sophisticated form of intelligence. Kira Martinez, monitoring the communication, whispered to Director Oleander, "They're actually listening. Really listening." As the diplomatic session continued, something profound was happening. The Vordak were beginning to understand that what they had previously classified as irrational was actually a deeply nuanced approach to survival and cooperation. The universe watched, as two species with fundamentally different worldviews began to find a common language, not through mathematical precision, but through the messy, beautiful complexity of understanding. The galactic sector known as the Crimson Drift had always been considered a diplomatic nightmare. A region of space where multiple species converged, each with competing interests and deeply entrenched survival strategies. It was here that the true test of human Vordak understanding would be challenged. A massive ecological catastrophe was unfolding. A series of interconnected planetary systems faced total environmental collapse, a scenario that would typically trigger a cold, calculated evacuation protocol from most spacefaring civilizations. Each species would calculate their own survival probability, abandon the most compromised regions, and preserve their own resources. The Horizon arrived with NXTerra aboard, a living bridge between two fundamentally different approaches to crisis management. Eli Rodriguez stood on the bridge, his eyes scanning the holographic displays showing the cascading environmental failures. Traditional evacuation protocols will result in 68% population loss, the ship's AI calculated coldly. Recommended action, selective preservation of most viable populations. Eli turned to NXTerra. That's not going to be our solution. The Vordak's crystalline form pulsed with uncertainty. Their previous interactions had challenged everything they understood about survival strategies, but this was different. This was a large-scale crisis that would test the limits of their newfound understanding. Preservation of maximum genetic diversity is mathematically superior, NX-Terra responded, their communication still tinged with the remnants of their previous logical framework. Director Zara Oleander stepped forward, bringing up a comprehensive holographic model of the affected planetary systems. "We're not looking at numbers," she said. "We're looking at lives. Communities. Entire ecosystems." The crisis involved 3 primary species, the silicon-based Torek, the gaseous Aryans, and the aquatic Hydrons. Each had unique physiological requirements that made traditional rescue impossible. The environmental collapse was complex, a cascading series of planetary interactions that defied simple solutions. Eli began to outline a plan that would have been dismissed as impossible by any other spacefaring civilization. Instead of selective evacuation, he proposed a comprehensive rescue strategy that would require unprecedented levels of cooperation and creative problem-solving. "We'll need to modify existing terraforming technology," he explained. "Create adaptive environmental modules that can support multiple species simultaneously. It's not about finding the most efficient solution, but the most inclusive one." Kira Martinez ran rapid simulations. The computational models looked impossible. The energy requirements, the technological adaptations, the sheer complexity of supporting 3 radically different species in a single rescue effort, it was madness. But it was human madness. NX-Terra watched as the human team worked. Their movements were chaotic, intuitive. Where Vordak would create a perfect, mathematically precise plan, humans were creating something more, a living, breathing strategy that adapted in real time. "Your approach introduces exponential variables," NX-Terra observed. "Statistically, this should fail." Eli smiled. "Statistics are just past data. We're creating something new." As the rescue effort began, something extraordinary happened. The adaptive environmental modules started to work in ways no one had predicted. The technology wasn't just preserving life, it was creating new possibilities for interaction between species. The Torek silicon-based biology merged with Hydron water filtration systems. Aryan atmospheric processors created new symbiotic relationships with planetary ecosystems. What should have been a catastrophic failure became a testament to collaborative survival. NX-Terra's entire crystalline structure began to pulse with a new pattern, something beyond calculation, beyond logic. It was understanding. "This is not survival," they transmitted. "This is evolution." The Crimson Drift began to transform. Not through force or mathematical precision, but through an approach that defied all previous understanding of interstellar crisis management. Humanity had done more than save lives. They had shown that the greatest survival strategy was not elimination of risk, but creation of possibility. The aftermath of the Crimson Drift rescue transformed galactic diplomacy forever. What had begun as a tentative first contact between humans and Vordak had become a watershed moment for interstellar cooperation. The Galactic Council convened on a massive space station constructed specifically to bridge the gaps between different species. Its design was a masterpiece of adaptive architecture, rooms that could reshape themselves, communication systems that translated not just language, but intent and emotional nuance. Eli Rodriguez stood at the center of this historic gathering, no longer just a representative of humanity, but a symbol of something far more profound. NX-Terra, once a rigid interpreter of mathematical probabilities, now stood beside him, their relationship a living testament to the power of understanding. The Crimson Drift intervention was not an isolated incident, Eli addressed the assembled delegates. It was a demonstration of what's possible when we move beyond our limitations. The holographic displays showed the cascading effects of their rescue mission. The environmental modules developed during the crisis were now being adapted across multiple planetary systems. What had started as a desperate rescue effort had become a blueprint for interstellar cooperation. Director Zara Oleander presented the comprehensive data. The survival rate of the rescued populations had exceeded all computational predictions by 237%. More importantly, the cross-species interactions had created entirely new forms of symbiotic relationships. NX Terra stepped forward, their crystalline form now capable of expressing something akin to emotion, a development that would have been impossible mere months earlier. Our previous understanding of survival was fundamentally flawed, they transmitted. Humans demonstrated that complexity is not a weakness, but the greatest strength of intelligent life. The Vordak representatives, once a monolithic entity driven purely by mathematical calculations, now showed signs of individual variation. Their rigid geometric forms had become more fluid, more adaptive. They had learned something fundamental from humanity, that uncertainty was not to be feared, but embraced. Kira Martinez presented the final report. It was not a dry technical document, but a narrative of possibility. Each page told a story of how human intuition, coupled with scientific rigor, had rewritten the rules of interstellar survival. We're not just saving lives, Eli explained. We're creating a new way of understanding existence. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent. Representatives from dozens of species, some carbon-based, some energy-based, some forms of life barely comprehensible to human perception, listened intently. A representative from the gaseous Aryan civilization spoke. Their communication was a complex symphony of color and vibration. Your approach challenges everything we understand about survival. You do not seek to control, but to understand. Eli smiled. That's the essence of humanity. We're not looking to conquer the universe. We're looking to connect with it. As the conference continued, something profound was happening. The rigid boundaries between species were dissolving. The Vordak's mathematical precision was being tempered by human creativity. Other civilizations were watching, learning, adapting. The rescue of the Crimson Drift had become more than a mission. It was a revolution. In the vast darkness of space, a new understanding was taking shape. Not through conquest, not through pure logic, but through the most powerful force in the universe, the ability to see beyond ourselves, to understand, to connect. Humanity had proven something extraordinary. Fear did not control them. Uncertainty did not paralyze them. They were architects of possibility, creators of hope. The universe would never be the same.